What is the relationship between young people, their movements, their organization, their causes, and funders?
But that is just a short excerpt of some of what we do at Magamba, an organization that I co-founded back in 2007. Magamba means heroes or freedom fighters. For us, setting it up as a youth organization in Zimbabwe, for us it was about reclaiming the rhetoric that's used by the ruling party, who for some reason believe that they're the only liberators in the country and there can be no freedom fighters apart from themselves. And so we set up Magamba in 2007 with the aim of using creative forms of activism and creative forms of youth activism to open up democratic space. And so since then we've grown into an organization that runs 5 major projects that all aim to reach young people with messages that speak to them and messages that they understand.
I work at a space called Power 254, which means power, and 254 is the country code for unity. And what we do is actually try and instill courage among young people and confidence. In 2002, there was this unity. There was young people rising up to vote out Moi. And they came together, and you realize that we are young people, but we are very hypocritical. Because we've been told you can't talk back at elders, you can't challenge authority, you can't speak your mind. Growing up, when the adults would come in, you'd be told to go and sit outside. And so we came up with power. And what power does is provoke thoughts and provoke discussions. We do the most outrageous things to make you talk about these things. Our country and our continent was liberated by young people. The question is, where did we lose our courage? And so power seeks to actually instill that confidence back to young people. How do we claim back our space? How do we speak out?
Everybody thinks that my place is in the kitchen. The cooking and cleaning, their ideal way of living. I live in a constant wonder, and with burning hunger, I often question, can this really fill me up? Having a baby in my tummy, being someone else's mommy, is that the only time that I'm good enough? Don't get me wrong, I want a home and a family, but I know that there's got to be more than just a man for me. I am a giver and I am a helper, largely because of the giving and help I have received and not received during my lifetime, other than the country of origin, and enable them to do volunteer work and integrate with the communities there. This was where I was exposed to the concept of philanthropy and learned that there was definitely a link between what I have been doing, which includes arts activism and helping young people with their businesses. And it really made me understand how it fit into the philanthropy landscape. I found this important because it's allowed me to assess my giving, challenge my giving, and transform my giving. I am at the starting point of an exciting journey, and me, like many other young people, I need your help.
As a young kid who came from a really poor background, raised with my mom's disability grant, who also has severe heart disease on top of that, it was a struggle to navigate the streets of Khayelitsha, the streets of UCT, now the streets of Oxford. I continue to suffer black tax as a black man because I need to give back, and I cannot explore the world, yet I'm told I'm at a place where I'm ought to be exploring the world, because I need to give back even though I'm a student. And those are sort of issues that I feel are often overlooked and we need to speak about. And hence I work with the MH Foundation, an organization that was started by young professionals, because we want to change this narrative of idealizing philanthropy, where we just limit philanthropy to the Western definition, where we say that you ought to be a Richard Branson or Bill Gates before you can make a tangible contribution. Nelson Mandela, former state president, said something very important. He said, in receiving an exceptional education, one embraces the responsibility to foster opportunities, in fact, similar opportunities for others. So of course I'm not going to wait until I accumulate wealth. I earned an intern salary and I used that to start. And we're making a huge difference in Khayelitsha so that more and more young people look up to the work that we do and in fact realize that it is the work of the everyday philanthropist and not the billions that get donated into that makes a difference to our continent.
I hear Twitter, I'm hearing of all these online platforms. You've made us laugh. What is all of this adding up to? Are we just laughing at our problems? What is it adding up to for you?
if you look at youth activism is nothing new in itself. I mean, youth activism is, as we were saying earlier, what helped to get rid of apartheid. Youth activism was involved in the liberation struggle in Zimbabwe. Youth activism is there every single generation. I think the main thing that those gathered here today have to realize is that it's the tools that change. And the tools that worked in the 80s and 90s aren't the ones that are working today or being used today. If we're talking of the tools that are being used today, take a look at the significant youth activism that you see around the continent, and you look at Senegal and the Yonamama movement, and how hip-hop was used as a mobilizing force to vote out one leader and get another one in. You take a look at Burkina Faso, once again, it was a youth activist movement also using urban culture that got rid of a leader. So I think, you know, one of the things we need to realize is that tools are changing, and that, you know, funders and organizations here have to realize that workshops and conferences, etc., don't talk to young people in the language that satire does, that hip-hop does, and that Twitter does.
What is special about young people, and what is the impact you are seeing from your approaches?
Okay, let me first say that Africans are philanthropic by birth. The moment you're born and you get an education, we expect you to give back to your community. When you get a job and you have a salary and you move to the city, we expect you to send money back home. And if you have an extra room, or you can share a room with your brother, your cousin, and that's how Africans move to the cities. I think the way the continent was developed, it was developed to exploit it. So you look at the road network and the railways. They are all situated about like the main towns where there's coffee, there's gold, and it's all going to the port to take the goods away from the continent. That's how the continent is built. This is why Mugabe is still in power, and you have issues across this continent. It's because young people lack values and they have a lot of fear. And so the work that I do actually is not special. The work that I do is actually, how do you encourage acts of courage? How do you encourage defiance? That you can be defiant to a system that does not favor you, that you can say no to the things that you don't agree with. You say our countries are corrupt, who is paying bribes? It's young people. Our country has crime, who's doing it? Young people. Who is ruling us? The old men. So there's a need to rethink how philanthropy is done and how you can teach Africans and young Africans to discover their voice. Because as we speak, we do not have a voice. We don't have a voice. But why are we special? We're special because we want a better future. We're special because not all of us can leave this continent and go and look for asylum or go to Europe. We're special because we're no longer willing to get into the slave ships by ourselves. Because right now, there's a lot of Africans living and dying trying to get into Europe. But some of us have said, no, we cannot leave our continent. We're going to stay here and fight back and reclaim back our dignity.
What is it that you are beginning to, catch, that's inspiring you, that's encouraging you, that's fueling you, that's giving you the energy, and the excitement, because I can sense it?
What has really excited me about what I'm seeing around me is that young people, people in general, are taking the opportunity to not only do what they have to do, but do what they want to do and believe in doing. Both my parents study teaching, and since my mom has moved forward in education, and at the beginning of my journey with the exploits that I've been doing, she didn't completely understand the role and the path that I decided to take. And I've now been able to gain her support and her understanding, and it really is a big deal for people to not only have a career or a job because they need to make money, but to see a career and a job as an opportunity to promote change. I am inspired to know that it is possible for us to take on the new challenges that we see, to give the new answers that we have, and to not only sit back and accept what we are told is the lucrative way, the right way. Go to school, go to university, work one job for the rest of your life, but do what it is you believe you've been purposed to do in the life and impact the world in the process.
Why young people? If you could speak to that from your own experience, but also speak to, what is it that is different when you go out there, that are like, this is, the approach that young people are using that is different. Why should we even pay attention to that kind of, demographic categorization? Why young people? But also, please speak a little bit more on the impact that you are seeing building up from that approach.
The reason I think it's why we're making the big fuss about young people is because young people are inexperienced. It is the inexperience that brings the innovation, the way in which we do things a lot differently. And that is often something that people do not tap into. You know, we see things from a different perspective. We are resourceful in ways that are unimaginable. We travel the world without leaving the room. You know, we engage in Twitter, we may be in Africa, we do things in unconventional means that challenge both our parents, our elders, our seniors, and we have a voice, we've got something to say. This is our world and this is our future. And that is why we may sit here and talk about the impact that young people have and measure them according to sort of these standards. And young people have a different way in which we measure that impact using the assets that we have, the privilege that we have, as opposed to the wealth that we've created.
We have 70% of our young people in Africa. That is practically the entire Africa is young. You know, so invest in us because nothing for us without us, that's one. And then secondly, invest holistically, not because you want to get something back, because it is our right. It has to start from the right. It is my right to get education, to get health, so start from there.
Every single one of you sitting on this panel, you are indeed creative activists. I say this because you have branded yourselves, you know who you are, you know what you do, you know what you stand for, and therefore by doing so you have positioned yourself.
I'm here past my 40th birthday and I hear you talking about the same things that we're talking about. How do you avoid being like me? Because I know I was foolish. Being the proverbial monkey in a cage. You're not going to be youth forever because we're still young. How do you, in the short time you still have, address just 3 things we didn't address? An African consciousness, right? Because what we failed, that Nyerere and others started, was the non-funded, non-fundable struggle around an African collective consciousness. A people-to-people integration.
How are you tapping into the wisdom that we have here? Activists that are present, how are you working with them?
I want us to know how these youth spaces, what you're trying to do in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, will not usher in somebody who does not represent your value systems. So that when we get there, it is us who are in power and not propelled somebody else who's not part of us.
The biggest problem is that we lack role models and we pretend to have them, but they're not there. They are there, and once they become, you know, once they get stature, once they become detached from those experiences. And I think that, and the reason we keep making into the mistake and falling into those pit holes is because the elders who've walked the walk are not willing to engage honestly with some of their struggles and how we can overcome. So we need to. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. So it's one thing saying that, you know, how do we tap into the wisdom? But we need to speak and honestly speak and engage those institutional barriers, those systematic problems that prevent us or hinder us from speaking.
We've seen the NGO experiment, and now how do we move beyond that? How do we move beyond the briefcase laptop NGO experiment into organic initiatives that link with young people? So I think that's a really important way of not becoming the monkey in a cage, daring to do things differently, and learning from the mistakes of the bureaucratic NGO experiments of the last few decades.
We need to listen to young people, because we don't listen to them. And we take risks with young people. Some of you can risk with me and they believe in me, that's what's in this panel. So when you go back to your communities, when you go back to where you work, take a risk with those young people. Give them a chance, listen to them. You may not like what they're trying to do, you may not, but push them in the right way. Don't kill their hopes, don't kill their dreams, because their future is now.
I believe that a lot of what I have learned and a lot of what other young people like Briani and the other members in this room have learned has helped them survive their problems, their social problems, and overcome and solve those social problems. And I firmly believe that education and what we teach our children at school, it needs to change, it needs to improve, the value needs to increase.
Development cooperation is no longer the exclusive domain of states or international organizations, right? We now rely on contributions from the private sector, and this is an area that there is a lot of debate around, a lot of discussion, particularly for those of you that are involved in the financing for development conversations, looking at the SDGs. The reason I think it's important for us to pay attention to the private sector as an actor is because of the significant influence that this sector is having and the fact that we cannot afford to ignore them. Whether we agree with what they do and how they work, we must engage with them. Whether it's critically, constructively, we partner with them, we don't partner with them, we have to engage with the private sector as an actor.
These are issues, the funding issues which you raised, are issues we struggle with on a day-to-day basis. But I think the new expose of the data where we are, but also on the strategies which they are coming in terms of bringing in new challenges like the private sector, are important for us to really engage.
We still have a long way to go in terms of dismantling patriarchy. Not only have we worked with traditional leaders, government leaders, as well as religious leaders to transform their thinking, their attitudes, norms and values around them appreciating more the work that women contribute to societies, but also just the rights that we have. But I think one sector that we have left, and that we have left for a long time, partly because we were focused on some of the structural challenges that we felt were priority at that time, is the private sector. And this is where most of the resources are coming from. Because again, when you look at the private foundations that are supporting us right now, most of their profits are coming from the private sector.
One thing I wanted to sort of raise around this, I think in South Africa, where there are movements that are not sexy enough for donors, so the social movements on land issues, etc., and I think also on women's issues, there were certain things that we needed to do in order to generate that interest even among the corporates. So the one was the whole principle of sort of saying, when we go to donors, we don't ask for money, we're asking for advice. And sort of start to pull together a donors alliance to not come and give money, but to come and walk with us as this movement unfolds. And in that way, they start realizing that we should be putting our funds within that.